You feel that itch, a new match, a warm notification, a rush of lust, and you give in. Doesn't matter if it distracts you from your mission, empties your head, or triggers guilt an hour later. You did it because the discomfort of discipline felt heavier than the buzz of momentary escape. Freud called it the pleasure principle, your id craving instant gratification with zero regard for consequence. The flip side is the reality principle, where your ego kicks in, weighs the pros and cons, keeps you tethered to time, money, purpose. But you've let the skipper sleep. You turned control over to dopamine. That's how addictive compromise starts. Not with grand falls, but with these tiny surrenders. A longing glance at soft satisfaction becomes a habit. A late-night scroll becomes a personality. And suddenly, you're living for stimulus, not substance. Freud said this is the struggle of civilization. Your primal urges pulling north, your mind forging south. But he also warned that giving in too easy kills integrity. The man who values pleasure over principle gives away his soul. Because pleasure has a price. And it's not just the energy you lose drifting into distraction. It's the detachment from your own reality, the separation from purpose, the loss of pain, strength, growth. Pleasure doesn't just fill gaps, it rewires them. Your chest tightens during stress. You sedate. You feel guilty. You numb. You miss her. You scroll to feel alive. You fear your masculinity. You chase a mirror of feeling. That's not coping. That's capitulation. Women may not intend it. Her laughter, her need, her permission to escape, it seduces. She becomes a balm for every itch you don't want to feel. And you mistake comfort for connection, relief for love. Now every smooth path feels safe. Every avoidance feels smart. But Freud warned, your ego becomes weak when it doesn't earn its mettle. The reality principle falters. The id storms. So now your mind is prey to the next urge, the next appeasing whisper, the next just this once. That's the fatal flaw of modern masculinity. A man who fears boredom more than breakdown will always choose the easy hit. And when the real storms roll, loss, challenge, conflict, he'll endure them like an addict in withdrawal. This script isn't just talk, it's a warning. Pleasure is not power. Avoidance is not maturity. Your ego should be your compass, not your drag sink. Later, we break down how this hunger for comfort bleeds into your relationships, how you trade spine for sympathy, dominance for distraction, truth for tenderness disguised as toxicity. But right now, see this. Pleasure without limit is your undoing, and you unwound it. You didn't notice it at first. That quiet reshaping of your words, the edits to your tone, the way you delayed your truth just long enough to make sure she wouldn't flinch. You told yourself you were being kind, being mature, being a good man. But Freud wouldn't call that maturity. He'd call it repression. And it always starts subtly. You avoid conflict because she seems fragile. You don't want to hurt her. You don't want to be the bad guy. But what you miss is that every moment you compromise truth to keep her comfortable, you erode the spine you were born with. And she feels it. Women may not consciously weaponize your fear, but they read it, they test it, they feel the hesitation and exploit the pause. It's not always malicious, it's instinctual. Because once you show that comfort overrides truth for you, they know they can mold you. And here's the punch in the gut. They lose respect for the man they can mold. Freud understood the female role in this dynamic, not in a reductive or hostile way, but in a deeply honest one. He saw how the maternal, nurturing force can become a subtle tyrant in a man's psyche. The mother figure soothes pain, suppresses rage, calms desire, and over time, rewrites your understanding of strength. Now you think masculinity is self-erasure. You think being strong means being soft. Being centered means being agreeable. You think discomfort in her eyes is danger, and that pleasure in hers is your new North Star. But that's not love. That's guilt-based compliance. You start shaping your reality around her moods. You retreat from decisions that would make you feel alive just to avoid the sting of her disappointment. And you call it emotional intelligence. You call it partnership. It's not. It's self-abandonment. This is how Freud's reality principle gets corrupted. The ego, meant to balance desire and consequence, becomes the slave of emotional politics. Now you don't decide based on truth. You decide based on emotional weather. She frowns. You fold. She cries. You pause. She threatens to leave. You shrink. You're no longer a man navigating life. You're a regulator of someone else's internal storms. And eventually, your nervous system forgets what stillness feels like. You live in constant alert, preparing, adjusting, accommodating. You're a man without center. And Freud would say, you've replaced your ego's guidance with emotional conditioning. Here's the hard truth. You can't protect her from pain without sacrificing your edge. And every time you choose peace over purpose, she senses it. Not as love, but as weakness. She might not say it, but she knows. So ask yourself now, are you leading or are you obeying her feelings? Because there's no middle ground. You don't want to admit it, but it's there. That tension in your chest when she sighs, that sharp guilt when she says, I just feel like you're distant. That ache behind your ribs when she gets cold, and you start asking yourself what you did wrong. Again. This is what happens when you confuse emotional comfort with emotional health. You get good at managing feelings, but you forget how to handle truth. And the longer you live this way, avoiding discomfort, appeasing moods, the more you start to hate the man you've become. You hate that you fold. You hate that your words feel filtered. You hate that you're exhausted from tiptoeing through your own life. Freud called it repression for a reason. When your mind pushes truth into a corner just to avoid the sting of conflict, that truth doesn't die. It festers. It turns inward. It becomes bitterness. Not at her, at you. And that's where the rot sets in. Because eventually, you start believing the lie you created to survive. You start thinking your desires are dangerous, that your edge is cruelty, that your fire needs to be tamed so no one gets burned. But it's not your fire hurting people. It's your fear of owning it. You don't feel strong anymore because you've been castrating your instincts for years. You've surrendered authority not to a law, not to a cause, but to emotional cues. Raised eyebrows, shaky voices, long silences. Freud would say you're no longer operating from the ego. You're operating from the superego twisted by external guilt and internal shame. You've replaced clarity with apology. You've turned manhood into a performance judged by how happy she is and how invisible your needs are. So of course you feel hollow. Of course you feel tired. You've built a life designed to look peaceful but feel like a slow collapse. And when you live like that for too long, something breaks. You either implode, get quiet, get passive, lose direction, or you explode. You lash out, not because you're cruel, but because the truth you've buried starts clawing its way out. Freud warned us, whatever you repress returns louder, meaner, more destructive. And if you don't face it consciously, it will own you subconsciously. So ask yourself now, what are you pretending not to feel? What desires have you labeled dangerous? What truth have you choked down to make her feel safe? Because the longer you lie to yourself, the more you'll resent the man staring back in the mirror. And no woman, no relationship, no lifestyle can save you from that. Only you can. You think you're evolving, growing, healing. You listen more, speak less. You make space for everyone's feelings. You read the posts, watch the clips, nod along. Men need to soften. Real masculinity is vulnerability. Power is oppressive. You're told this is virtue, progress. But step back, really step back, and look around. Does it feel like strength? Does it feel like clarity? Or does it feel like you're constantly treading water, afraid to say the wrong thing, feel the wrong thing, want the wrong thing? Freud would have laughed and then warned you. Because when guilt becomes your compass, you're no longer free. You're programmable. And the modern world knows exactly how to program you. You're taught that desire is dangerous, that discipline is toxic, that leadership is aggression in disguise. You're handed a script, and every line in it is built on shame. Not yours, someone else's wounds, someone else's insecurities, handed to you to carry. You walk through life with other people's shame wrapped around your spine like armor, and then wonder why you can't stand up straight. You call it being conscious, being sensitive. But what you've really done is internalize the war against your instincts. You no longer know what you believe. You only know what not to offend. You don't chase meaning, you dodge landmines. This is how a man becomes domesticated, not by chains, not by cages, but by ideas. Ideas designed to make you second-guess your anger, your drive, your vision, your dominance. They tell you it's dangerous, soften it, shrink it, channel it. But into what? Into passivity, into chronic self-doubt, into a man who apologizes for his own existence. The culture calls it progress. Freud would call it repression on a mass scale. And repression always demands a release. So what happens when an entire generation of men are trained to repress their fire? When their only job is to make sure no one around them ever feels unsafe? You get men who are emotionally wrecked, mentally numb, physically collapsed, and proud of it, because they've been told that collapse is compassion. That's the con. And until you tear off the emotional armor someone else strapped to you, you'll keep mistaking surrender for integrity. This isn't growth, it's grooming, and you've already paid too much for it. There's a version of you that never asked permission, a version that didn't care if it was too much, too loud, too intense. That version didn't need her approval to speak, didn't need culture's permission to move. He didn't fold when she frowned. He didn't compromise every edge until he was round and soft and safe. That version is still there, but he's buried, under guilt, under shame, under years of being told that your instinct is your enemy and that your strength is someone else's trauma. Freud never said you needed to kill your instincts. He said you needed to understand them, not fear them, not repress them, not let them run wild either, but meet them, study them, discipline them, and most importantly, honor their power. You haven't done that. You've run from your own fire and called it peace. You've tiptoed through relationships and called it love. You've censored your rage, your need, your truth, because you thought it would make you more acceptable. But the truth is, all it did was make you invisible. And invisibility is not safety, it's self-erasure. Somewhere along the line, you became scared of being called names. Aggressive, toxic, arrogant. You feared being misunderstood more than you feared being mediocre. And so you adapted, you adjusted, you softened, you stopped commanding. And now what's left is a body that looks alive but doesn't lead. A voice that speaks but never declares. A mind full of clarity that you keep shoving down because you don't want to disturb her calm. But ask yourself, what good is her calm if it costs you your core? You were not built to be liked. You were built to be aligned, to live in sync with your values, your purpose, your vision, that requires discomfort, that demands conflict. That means sometimes she's going to cry. Sometimes she's going to leave. Sometimes the world is going to push back hard. Good. Because the only way you know who you are is by pushing back harder. That fire inside you, it's not rage, it's not recklessness, it's identity. It's your instincts begging to be honored, not muted. Freud didn't say to destroy the id. He said to integrate it, to face it, to train it. The man who does that becomes immovable because he's not at war with himself. He's not a puppet of moods or a slave to feelings. He's a sovereign force, calm, clear, direct. That man is still inside you. He's waiting, but he's not going to rise on his own. You've got to drag him out of the dark. You don't need more advice. You don't need another trend, another method, another soft voice telling you how to heal your masculine. You've tried that. You've journaled. You've meditated. You've played the nice guy long enough to realize niceness doesn't get you respect. It gets you used. Freud didn't design psychology to make you feel better. He exposed it so you'd wake up. And now you're out of excuses. Because every time you tell yourself, I don't want to hurt her, what you're really saying is, I'm afraid to be real. Every time you swallow your truth to keep peace, what you're doing is feeding your own decay. You are slowly becoming the man who lets his own mind become enemy territory, full of desires he doesn't trust and thoughts he doesn't voice. That's not emotional maturity. That's spiritual suffocation. You were not designed to live in sedation. You weren't built for compromise as a lifestyle. You are not here to be agreeable at the expense of being alive. You're here to choose discipline over dopamine, clarity over guilt, fire over fear. That's Freud's reality principle in action. To face discomfort with presence, to stand inside your tension and stay upright, to see the need to run, to numb, to appease, and do the opposite. That's how you rewire your system. That's how you rebuild your spine. Not in theory, in fire, in the moment. When everything in you wants to fold, but you don't. And you don't need to hate her to do this. You don't need to rage against women or culture or systems. You just need to stop making them your compass. Because the moment you stop filtering yourself through her mood, you remember who you are again. Freud wasn't saying don't feel. He was saying don't let feelings rule you. Don't let your guilt rewrite your values. Don't let fear of rejection become a leash on your potential. You're not here to be domesticated. You're here to decide. And every day you either move closer to the man who owns himself or the man who hands himself over. You know which one you've been. But it's not too late to switch. If this hit you, then say something in the comments. Leave your mark. And if you want to keep walking this path, like and subscribe to the channel. Let this be your reminder of what you are when you stop apologizing for being yourself. No more pleasing, no more hiding. Reality is your crucible now. Stand in it.